Do you feel like no matter how hard you try, you just can't get into a good and healthy sleep routine? Have you tried all of the tips and advice, anything that you can get your hands on, but you're still lying awake at 3 a.m. with racing thoughts, thinking about how tired you're going to be the next day in that 4 p.m. meeting and whether you're going to be able to keep your focus? Well, if this sounds familiar to you, then this is the video for you. And no, this is not another 5 tips for better sleep video with generic advice that you've already heard a million times, like turning off your lights at night or cutting out caffeine. I'm a sleep coach, and I'm going to break down the exact process that I use with my clients and that have helped people like Alex, for example, go from 4.5, 5 hours of sleep at night for years and waking up multiple times to increasing his sleep by an hour and a half in just a few weeks, helping him feel more energized, focused at work, and more present with his family. Let's dive in. First, we need to understand why the typical advice that you've been following has not worked for you and has been pretty much holding you back from fixing your sleep in the long term. It's quite simple. Typical sleep advice really falls into 3 main buckets. 1, strict bedtime rules and routines. So these are things like turning off all your screens, meditating, journaling, listening to relaxing music, making your bedroom dark and cool, and basically adding 10 steps into your already busy schedule. 2, an endless list of supplements and gadgets. So you need to take melatonin, magnesium, ashwagandha, you name it. And then 3, quick hacks that make you fall asleep faster, like the cognitive shuffling method or certain techniques that you use in the moment to make yourself fall asleep. Now, first of all, this is very overwhelming, right? There's a lot here. Like, where do you even start? You already have a busy schedule and you're already struggling to squeeze everything into your day. Now you're also having to create this 2-hour wind down routine, adding 10 different steps. So what you typically do is you either get overwhelmed and you don't do anything, or you try and go all in and you do all the things, and then you do that for a couple of days, but it all falls apart pretty quickly because you have a schedule, a busy work life and a personal life. And oftentimes, if you need to take, let's say, a late night call, or you need to wake up early in the morning, that all falls apart because now you're not in your usual schedule anymore. And it really makes you feel defeated. It makes you feel just ready to give up, and you just kind of fall off and you stop trying. The problem with all of this advice is that it only really fixes symptoms quickly. If you can't fall asleep at night, try XYZ technique and it will be fixed, it will be cured. But these techniques rarely address the underlying cause of your sleep problems. So they might work in the moment or for a couple of days in the short term, but if you really want to fix your sleep for good and find a long-term solution that is sustainable, you need a slightly different approach. You need a step-by-step approach that starts with the underlying problems and understanding your individual sleep struggles and the actual mechanics of how sleep works and the underlying behaviors and habits that would lead to healthy sleep. Only then can you layer on the techniques and the lifestyle optimization strategies, or even think about things like supplements. I like to call this the sleep pyramid. It's really kind of like a hierarchy. First, we really need to start at the bottom layer here, a self-assessment. You need to understand yourself first. You can't fix a problem if you don't know the underlying root cause. If you think about how you approach a problem in your job, let's say you're a sales manager and your team is not hitting their targets. You're not just going to tell everyone to work harder. That's not really going to fix it, because you need to find the root cause first. Is it because they're not working harder? Or is it marketing? You're not getting enough leads. It's your positioning of your product in the market. It's the sales process. People are dropping off somewhere. Or do you need to train people better? Is it maybe the incentives, the compensation structure? So there's so many different things that can affect the performance of a salesperson. So you need the same kind of approach when you look at your sleep. Only when you have a full picture of your daily habits, your schedule, your beliefs, your behaviors, lifestyle choices, all of these things affect your sleep. And so once you have a full picture of that, you can better prioritize and understand where to start making those improvements. You're not trying everything at once, but you are hitting the areas where you can make the most impact. I have a full video walkthrough of how you can assess your own sleep and links to all of the assessment templates in the description of this video. So if you want to do this on your own, you can absolutely do that following the instructions in that video. Now, the second layer is thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. Before you even think about making any changes to your current routine, to your bedtime routine, what time you wake up, you need to address your sleep-related beliefs. This is going to sound a bit weird. What does that mean? So our thoughts and beliefs shape our behavior in general. And that's really the foundation that a lot of people miss. If you try and skip this step, you actually never truly fix your sleep. So again, if we're going back to your sales team not hitting their targets, let's say it's a mindset problem and everybody just thinks that hitting targets is actually not achievable. They just think, oh, it's not doable. So if they believe that, then they're likely not going to put in the effort or the right behaviors that actually lead to success. And that's the same when it comes to sleep. It's simple things like believing that you need to catch up on sleep if you have a bad night, which is actually counterproductive and can lead to more irregular sleep. Or things like believing that you need 8 hours of sleep every night to function. That's putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and it's also not really completely true. And I go over this in another video over here, so if you're interested in sleep beliefs, check that out. But especially if you're an overachiever, you're probably a bit of a perfectionist. If you don't hit a certain sleep score or number, you start feeling like a failure, and that can lead to worse sleep because you're putting so much pressure on yourself and getting anxious about it. Again, I have a deep dive on that whole topic where I break down your sleep-related thoughts and beliefs and how you can reframe them and think about them differently. So check that out over here. The third layer in this pyramid is your circadian rhythm. So every living thing on this planet, humans, animals, even plants, we all have this internal clock, and it regulates every single part of our body. And it also resets every 24 hours. So this is what we call the circadian rhythm. And it's actually crucial to your sleep, but also to other parts of your health. So your daily habits can either help keep your body clock aligned and support those important processes like your digestion, production of hormones, like the melatonin that you need at night, cortisol in the morning, and it can keep you performing at your best. Or if you have habits that are not aligned, then they can confuse your body and it will make you feel alert or tired at the wrong time. And worse, it can increase things like the likeliness of developing chronic diseases. So your circadian rhythm is super, super important. And working on aligning your circadian rhythm will not only help you sleep better, but it's also the best long-term strategy to really stay healthy and happy. There are multiple levers to help align your natural body rhythm, and the biggest one is keeping a consistent wake-up time and bedtime schedule, but also exposing yourself to daylight, especially in the morning. This will really help reset your body clock and make it much easier to get to sleep at the right time in the evening. So once you've put in place the foundational behaviors and habits and beliefs that support your body's natural sleep mechanisms, we look at your nervous system and especially stress in your life. In order for sleep to happen, you do need three main things basically. You need high enough sleep pressure, which is a chemical in your brain that builds up as you are awake. So the longer you're awake, the more tired you get. The second thing is you have to have that aligned circadian rhythm so that your body knows when it's time to sleep and when it's time to be awake. But then the third layer here is a calm nervous system. So your body needs to feel ready for sleep, but also safe. Any kind of threat, even if it's an imaginary threat. So let's say a meeting with your boss the next day that you're worried about, that's not really a threat, a life-threatening situation, but it can seem like that to your brain and your body. And so it will make you feel wide awake. Many people start here and they believe that stress, like work-related stress, is the main reason they can't sleep. And yes, that it is a big part of it, but you try it, all these calming techniques, meditation, breathing exercises, all of these different tools, and they're great, but you jump into them and you haven't really worked on those underlying beliefs, aligning your schedule to a natural rhythm. So even with the most calm and most zen nervous system, you will still struggle because your sleep schedule is all over the place and your body thinks that it's 7 p.m. instead of 11 p.m. So you're still wide awake and you will still struggle. And that in turn can then trigger your nervous system again because you're worried about being awake. All of these mechanisms really need to be aligned and need to be in harmony to be able to sleep. There's a couple of things you can do when it comes to regulating your nervous system, but just make sure that you have that great foundation first and then look at ways that you can feel more calm at night. And this is very personal. So I'm not going to give you the exact things that you need to do that everybody needs to do, but there's a few things that you can start with. Some simple tools that you can try, see if they work, and then you can tweak them to your own needs. So one of them is brain breaks. So what does that mean? So we live in a world of constant stimulation and our brains can only take in so much, right? We get emails, social media, work meetings, all of these things. You might think that you're relaxing or taking a break by scrolling on your phone or listening to a podcast or watching TV before going to bed, but actually you could be making things worse because your brain is still being stimulated, still processing information or trying to process information. So when you go to bed, you're finally giving your brain time to actually digest that information. Everything is quiet. And now your brain starts to take over and now you can't sleep because your mind is racing. So instead, what I would suggest is just having some short brain breaks in the day. These could be just a few minutes in between, work meetings, just taking a quick break, getting away from your desk and, just doing nothing. No stimulation, no music, no nothing. Just sitting or standing somewhere, looking out the window, going outside for a quick walk, and just kind of enjoying your surroundings, focusing on your surroundings and where you are in the moment, but not really ingesting new information. So that's one thing you can do, which I think is just helpful in general for your nervous system. Then the second one is breath work. And this one comes up a lot as a technique to sleep better. But I also think this is something that is really helpful during the day. And, you might think, well, breathing is something that we just should do automatically, right? We shouldn't have to work on how to breathe. But there are actually a lot of people that have shallow breathing and they don't realize, or you're breathing through your mouth too much. And this is why things like mouth tape has gone viral on social media and it's promoted by all the wellness influencers. But mouth tape alone can't fix your circadian rhythm or your beliefs. It also doesn't really fix how you breathe during the day. So instead of buying more products, just take a few minutes every day to just do a simple breathing exercise. So I do this on my walks with my dog or when I take, short brain breaks, just breathing deeply. And that signals the brain to reduce cortisol and adrenaline and can help you manage stress during the day and also sleep better at night. And there's different techniques you can use. The most common one to start with is box breathing, where you just inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 4 seconds. And then hold again, and then start that process again. So that just helps you focus as well and sort of settle down. And you can do this during the day, in the evening, or even at night if you wake up. The third one is journaling. You might say, I don't want to do that. That seems like too much work. But it is a great tool to just process your thoughts from the day and dealing with that sort of constant problem solving. You don't need to do anything crazy. It's just maybe keeping a journal by the side of your bed or just taking a piece of paper and a pen. It really doesn't need to be anything special. Just writing down any thoughts that come to your mind. You don't even need to follow any structure or prompts. Doing what we would call a brain dump, where you're just kind of trying to deal with any worries or any problems that you had before going to sleep. And because they are on paper now, you're less worried about them or forgetting them, and your brain can kind of just get rid of that for the time being and focus on just the next day and tackling the day with kind of a fresh mind. You can do that anytime. Now, there are many more techniques such as yoga, stretching, visualization, guided meditation. This is just to give you some ideas. And again, this is not video on meditation or relaxation techniques. And I would just recommend looking at your current schedule and just adding maybe one simple habit that you can easily add into your day, and one thing that you could maybe add into your nighttime routine. Just keeping it simple, small steps that can make a huge impact. Then the last layer of this pyramid is lifestyle. The top of the pyramid is really what actually most of the sleep advice falls into. It's the typical cutting out caffeine, alcohol, keeping devices out of the bedroom, keeping your bedroom dark and cool and comfortable, and buying this special pillow and all of these things. And although some of these items also kind of fall into the circadian rhythm, like the temperature or even nervous system regulation techniques, at this point you have a solid foundation. So this step is really just the cherry on the top, which means that if you happen to have a bad night of sleep because you worked late or you had a social event, you had some drinks, you don't need to beat yourself up about it, because as long as you're not doing that every single night, you can come back to those foundations we talked about. And as long as you stick to them, you'll find it much, much easier to recover and get back into a healthy routine. So you might ask yourself, how do you put all of this into practice and actually make it stick? Everyone is different, and there is no one size fits all strategy that works the same for everyone. But here is a roadmap that you can use, and you can adapt it to your needs. What I would do in week 1 typically is an assessment and sort of prioritization. Track your sleep for a week at least. What time you get up, what time you go to bed, how often you wake up at night, how you feel when you wake up, your daytime habits, your mood, how much sunlight you get, what's your diet like. All of these things, track them for about a week at least, so you can really get some good trends and insights. Then assess your sleep beliefs, your environment, your lifestyle. I have a copy of all of these assessments for free in the description, so check that out, or you can comment assessment and I'll send you a link to the free assessment toolkit. It includes everything you need to assess your own sleep and get to the root cause. So at the end of that week 1, you look at trends and you identify those top priority areas for improvement. So that in week 2, when we get into thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors, we really know what to focus on. This is where we focus on the foundational behaviors and reframing some of those really strong beliefs that you've identified, because they are going to be different based on your personality. For example, if you wake up early during the week, like let's say on your sleep diary, you track that you typically wake up early for work, but then you sleep in on the weekends, and it's quite a huge difference, maybe 2 or 3 hours. Just try to be a bit more consistent. Keep your wake up time within 30 to 60 minute window, but don't worry about not getting enough sleep, right? That's the problem. If you happen to have a late night on a Friday, try not to sleep in as much as you normally would, and just focus on consistency and getting closer to consistency and having a consistent wake up time especially. You'll likely find it easier to get to sleep at night, and those small improvements can make a huge impact on your confidence in your ability to sleep. So then in week 3, we look at the circadian rhythm. There are multiple ways to align your circadian rhythm. One of them is getting up at the same time. So hopefully in that kind of first couple of weeks, you've already started resetting your circadian rhythm. But now we're looking at other ways. So for example, sunlight exposure. If you don't get much sunlight in the morning currently, make that your priority for the week. Your sleep schedule should be more consistent now, but adding that consistent daylight exposure, at least 15 minutes, will further regulate your body. Again, you don't need to make this complicated. If you have a balcony, patio, even standing outside with your coffee is enough. But if you can go for a short walk, even better, because it also helps regulate your nervous system. And other ways that you can improve your circadian rhythm alignment is keeping a regular eating schedule, avoiding late night meals, regulating your temperature by cooling down your body in the evening, and increasing it in the morning to get you going. That supports the natural production of melatonin and cortisol at the right time. As we get into week 4, we're going to look at your nervous system. Once you've started resetting your clock and your natural rhythm, and you're getting more consistent and following these healthy sleep behaviors, you're going to pick some habits that will help you manage that stress a little bit better and regulate you. So I would say pick one daytime habit, like the short brain breaks I talked about, and then maybe one evening ritual, something that you really enjoy. It could be stretching exercises, it could be reading a book, it could be really anything. So don't make this complicated, just do something that's achievable for you and that feels relaxing and enjoyable as well. And don't force yourself into doing something, because this will backfire, of course. And then as we get into week 5, we're going to look at lifestyle and environment. So take a look at anything that you can now tweak. For example, maybe making your bedroom a bit more sleep friendly, adding some blackout curtains, or reducing your caffeine in the afternoon if you are drinking a lot of coffee and you feel like that's keeping you awake a little bit or affecting your sleep quality. Again, don't try and do all these things at once. Prioritize the areas that you feel would be the biggest impact for you and that you're most affected by. So for example, some people can drink caffeine in the evening and they sleep fine. So don't change something if it doesn't make sense to you, just because some expert claims that you have to do this. I personally, for example, need the room to be super dark. I need to block out a lot of noise, but that might not be true for you necessarily. And then in week 6 is where we put it all together and we sort of tweak and adapt it further. You want to review your progress here, of course, and then just make some tweaks. You want to also identify your non-negotiables. So what are the things that really have made the biggest impact so far? And identify those as the things that you need to do every single day. Even if you're having a bad day, even if, the world's going to end, these are the things you're going to do. And for me, for example, that's getting up around the same time every day and going out for a walk with my dog and getting that sunlight exposure. I always do that unless I'm terribly ill. But other than that, I always follow that. So for most of my clients, it is getting up at the same time, getting sunlight exposure, but there's also individual nuances. For example, one of my clients needs to have a slightly longer wind down routine. He sets an alarm in the evening 1 hour before bed, slowly turns off all the devices, does some yoga, gets ready for bed, whereas another client of mine does some Sudoku for a little bit and then maybe journals a little bit. I keep my own routine pretty simple because I don't want to overcomplicate things. So I just read a few pages with the lights dimmed and my Kindle with the backlight on but very low light, and that usually makes me feel quite sleepy after some time, and then I go to sleep. But if I had a very stimulating day, I feel a bit wired still, maybe that process takes a little bit longer to calm myself down, listening to some music or do a breathing exercise. Over time, you will have a toolkit of things that work best for you, and you might switch them every so often, but the basics should always be in place. So essentially not forcing your body to sleep, you're just inviting sleep in through these techniques and through these foundational elements. Your body understands that it is time to sleep, and all you're doing is just letting go of control and just letting sleep happen. That's really the key to great sleep, not forcing it, trusting your body, and just following the simple foundational steps of healthy sleep. If you happen to have a bad night and you can't sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night, just don't worry, we all do. So the less you worry about that, the easier you'll find it to get back into your usual rhythm. So that's it. There's no secret hacks. This is just a system that resets your sleep step by step. And it doesn't require a strict bedtime routine or lots of gadgets, lots of supplements that you need to keep up with. And this is really designed to create a healthy routine for life so that you have something that you can stick to and that doesn't fall apart within 2 weeks or if you go on holiday. And sleep is really a natural process. So the more we support this natural process, the easier it becomes. And I have a full guide where I deep dive into this 5-step process, including a 6-week implementation plan. So if you're interested in that, just comment blueprint or check the description of this video for the link. And as a bonus, you'll also get a free one-on-one private coaching session with me where I answer any of your questions. I can guide you through the process with some personalized advice, tips, suggestions to help you get the rest that you deserve and finally get into a routine that works for you. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you check all the links below And if you have any questions or there are any topics that you would like me to cover or go deeper into in the next videos, just drop them in the comments and I can address them in my upcoming videos. Thank you so much and sleep well.